What's up guys, Andre here, and today I'd like to take a look at using Laravel Airlock for mobile authentication. If you haven't seen my last video, definitely watch that first as we set up Airlock for authentication for your single page application. In this video, I'd like to take a look at how mobile authentication works. We'll be using React Native and Expo for this example, as that is the mobile framework I am most familiar with. Note that this will work with other clients as well, say a desktop app made with Electron. So let me show you the working example we'll make. It's pretty much the same as what we did in the last video, except now it is a mobile app. So here's the login page. It's unstyled as I didn't spend any time styling it. And we can log in. Actually, let me show you a login that doesn't work. And if you hit login, there should be validation. And this error is coming from the server. Now if I give it the correct credentials, so andre@andre.com, password, and log in, then we are redirected to another screen where I am getting this information from the server. And we can log out as well, and that takes us back to the login screen. Now, if you're used to how any token-based authentication works, Airlock is no different. If you've used Laravel Passport for password grant types before, it's pretty much the same thing. You have to hit an endpoint with your username and password, and if those credentials are correct, you get a token back, which you have to store locally on your device. If you want to visit any protected routes, you have to pass that token along as a bearer token. So let's go ahead and set this up in Laravel first, and then we'll work on the React Native app. So if you go into the docs here, I already installed Airlock in the last video, but there is one thing we have to set up to use API tokens, and that is to add this has API tokens trait on the user model. So let's go ahead and grab this, and let's go into our Laravel app. So this is the front end. Let's go to the back end here, and let's go to our user model, and I am going to add that trait. Okay, and let's just put it here. Has API tokens. Okay. And now if you go into the docs, we have to make a new endpoint because now we're not making use of cookie-based authentication. So we have to make a new endpoint that returns the token. And if you go down here, so Mobile Auth right here, then you'll see there is an example here, which we'll make use of. So let's put this in our routes API, and then we'll work from there. So let's go to routes API. Routes API. And let me just grab everything here. Let's start with the use statements. Put that here. And they already have a request. Cool. And let me grab this whole route. And you can put this in a controller if you want, but I'm just going to leave it here. So this will be our login endpoint. If you want, you can change this to login, but I'm just going to leave it. So there's some validation here. It checks if we have a user. If it doesn't, then throw an error. And if it does, create a token and return it. So let's get this working in Insomnia first, in my REST client. And then we'll make it work in React Native. So let's make a new endpoint here. Let's call it Airlock token, and it is a post request, and the endpoint is airlock example.test slash, what was it? Airlock slash token. And let's give it some headers here. Accepts. Accept. JSON. Okay. And let's hit that endpoint without sending anything. See if it works. Sorry, that should be /API. Okay. Okay, so we are getting the correct response. And let's go ahead and pass that data in. So we need email and password. So let's just add a body here. Let's do email. Let's try with a wrong email first. So blah@blah.com. gmail.com. And password is password. Let's try that. Okay. Oh, actually, we have to pass in a device name as well. So let's go ahead and add that. So I'm just going to hard code this to mobile. Okay, so provided credentials are incorrect. But now if I give it a correct user, then this should return a token. Oops. Okay, I can't type today. And there is the token. So I'd like this token to be in JSON format when it returns. So let's change that first. Actually, let me show you my database first. So the database has this personal access tokens table, which we didn't use in the first video because we were just making use of cookie-based authentication. But now, since we're using token-based auth, now this table gets populated whenever we log in. Cool. Okay, let's change that response. So let's return response something here and then 200 or 201 because we are creating a token. It's up to you. So we can just return the token here if we want, but I also want to return the created user as well. So I'm going to make a new variable here. Let me just move this up for you guys. Response is, this is an array, and I want the user. So user is going to be user. And I also want the token. So token will be token. And this can be token. And now we can just put it in here. Cool. So now we should get an array back. So let's try this again. There we go. Cool. So now if you want to make additional requests, we just have to grab this token. And if you go into my routes API, you'll see this endpoint, which returns the user, but that is behind the Auth Airlock middleware. And in order to get access to that, we have to pass along the token. So let's try that. Let's make a new endpoint here. Say airlock token protected. It's a GET request and airlockexample.com/API/user. And if I just hit that normally, actually we have to add the header first. Accept JSON. Okay. Oops, .test. Okay. So that's right, but if we pass in the token, so if we just go auth bear token, or you can just set it as a header, paste that in, and there we go. Cool. Okay, let's get this working in our mobile app. So I'm not going to be starting from scratch. I have some boilerplate code available, which I will walk through. So this is based off another video from Ben Awad, where he goes over how to use React Navigation and sets up the various screens for authentication. So definitely check this video out. This is where I learned how to use the latest version of React Navigation. So I showed you the working app, but let me show you the starting app here. So there's no communication with the backend yet, but it does have these screens available. So I have two sets of screens here, one set for the auth screens and one set for the logged in app screens. And they are called stack navigators. So I have a stack for the auth screens and a stack for the logged in app screens. So for the auth screens, I only have two screens. So log in, what you see here, and register. It's just a dummy screen. And for the logged in screens, if I hit login, I have this dashboard screen, which I want to show the user, and I want this information to come from the backend. And I have a dummy setting screen. And I have logout, which will log me out and set me back to the auth screens. So this login actually does sort of work right now, but it's just sort of a dummy login and doesn't get any information from a backend. So let me just walk you through the entire code base of our starting point here. So back to our front end. So the entry point is app.js, And I am just exporting a providers file here, which is making use of React's context API. So if you look at providers, which is in the source folder, you'll see I am just wrapping the entire application in an auth provider. And that's just so I can share state across the various screens. So if you look at the auth provider, you can see the state I am sharing across the entire application in here. So I'm sharing a user object, I'm sharing a login function, and I'm sharing a logout function. So by default, the user is null, as you see here. And when we log in, we are just faking this user. And secure store is where I'm storing the user and the token. There's one built into React Native called async storage, but secure store is part of Expo, and as the name implies, it is more secure. It pretty much has the same API. So I decided to go with secure store instead. So when I log in, I am setting the user here, and I am also setting the user in secure store. And when I'm logging out, I am just removing that key. Now, if you go into routes.js, here is where I am checking if the key in secure store exists in this useEffect hook, which is pretty much the mounted hook. And if there is a key, then we just log in. And if you go down here, I have a loading spinner here. And here is the logic to check if, or to check which stack to render. So if the key exists, like I showed you up there, then render the logged in app stack. And if not, then render the auth stack. So yeah, that's pretty much our starting point. Again, be sure to check out Ben's video if you want a better understanding of how React navigation works. Okay, now let's get started. The first thing I want to do is install Axios because we're going to be making HTTP requests. So I'm going to use yarn here. So yarn add Axios. Okay. And let's go ahead and make a request in our auth provider. So instead of using this fake user here, we want to get an actual user. So let's make a request. Actually, let's import Axios first. So import Axios from Axios. Let's go ahead and set the default URL, defaults.base URL equals HTTP airlock example.test. Okay. And let's go ahead and make a call here. So axios.get, it's a post request to /API/airlock/token, like I showed you earlier. And we want to pass in some data here. We need to pass in the email, and I'm going to hard code it for now. So andre@andre.com. And then we'll wire it up to the form in a second. Password is password. And then we can pass in the device name from here, which is what I'm going to do. But we can also just hard code it from the backend if that's the only device name. But the way I have it here, I'm passing it in from the front end. Okay. And it's called then, or you can use async await if you want. Let's grab the response. And like I showed you earlier, the response is going to be an object with the user and the token. So let's grab that. Let's save it into a variable called user response. And let's grab it. So email. I just want to store the email like I have in this fake user. So that will be response.data.user.email, or you can destructure if you want. I'm just going to leave it like this. And the token is going to be response.data.token. And we can catch the error as well, and we'll do validation later on. But for now, we'll just console log error.response. Okay, let's also console log the user response here, just to see if we're doing everything correctly. So I'm going to comment this out too for now. So I just want to see if this works. So back to our mobile app. So that auto reloaded. And I just hard coded in my credentials. So let's press login and let's check the console. And let me see if there's anything here. So it does seem to be working. Cool. So let's continue. So let's uncomment this and let's move this into here. Okay. And let's get rid of this console log. And instead of the fake user, we are setting the user to the user response. And in our local storage or secure store, let's pass in the user response here. And we no longer need this fake user information. Okay. So now let's see if this works. So again, it's still hard coded. So if I refresh and press login, there we go. And let's see if logout still works. And it does. Cool. Okay, now let's make sure that it's actually getting the username and password from the input here. So let's go to our auth stack. So right here. And in our login screen, let's add some new state here. So we need the email and the password, or the username and the password. I'll stick to email and password. So const email set email equals use state, and set it to an empty string or null by default. Empty string is fine. And let's do the same for password. Password. Okay, and let's make sure to import use state up here. And now, as you can see, I have some comments here. For on change text, we just want to set the email here to the text. So set email for this one. And I'm also going to add text content type to be email address. This is like input type equals email in the browser. And by default, it capitalizes the first letter. So I want to set that to false. Or if you just set it to none, that should work. Okay. And let's do the same for our password here. So on change text, this is going to be set password. And now when we log in, we want to pass in the email and password. So let's pass that in. Email, password. And let's make sure to accept that in our auth provider. So in the login, let's accept the email and password. And now we can just use that. So instead of this, we'll just do email and password. Actually, we don't even have to because that's implied. So let me just do email and password. Okay. Let's see if this still works. So let's try a wrong login first. Okay. And we'll take a look at validation in a second. But now, if I do this, see if this works. Okay, cool. So if you look at this user, this is actually grabbing from local state because we set it when we logged in. So this is not actually getting it from the server. I mean, it does when we log in, but I want to add another field here that actually grabs something from the server and displays it here. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go to our app stack and let's just add another text in here. And let's just say, let's put their name in here, user from server, and then we'll put their name in here. Okay, see if that shows. Okay, cool. So let's add some state to store that and to set it. So const name set name equals use state, and set it to null by default. And let's make sure to use state up here. And what I want to do is just make another Axios request in a mounted hook or a use effect hook. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's put it underneath here in the dashboard screen. So use effect, and let's pass it in the callback. And the second param is an empty array. Okay. And I'm just going to grab the imports from Axios from here and grab this as well. So I am duplicating this base URL. You should find a way to store Axios and the base URL globally. But for now, I am duplicating code. And here, we want to make a request to the /API/user endpoint. So if you remember, this is protected by Airlock, and we want to get the logged in user's information. So let's go ahead and do that. So axios.get /API/user, and then response. We're going to set the name to response.data.name, and then we can catch as well error. And I'm just going to console log error.response. Okay. So if I try this, this is not going to work because we are not passing in the bearer token. So if I try this, I have to import a use effect up here first. Hold on. So use effect. Okay. And let's try it again. Okay, cool. Let me just refresh this. And let me log in again. And if you look at the response coming back, it is a 401, which is unauthenticated because we're not passing in the bearer token. So let's go ahead and do that. Actually, let's set this name while we're here. So down here, let's just set this to name. Okay. And to set the bearer token, we just have to tell Axios to pass it in. So axios.defaults.headers.common and authorization. Actually, that should be an array. Okay. And that's going to be a bearer token. So bearer space, and then let's grab the user's token. So user.token. Okay, so if I did this correctly, then this should grab the information from the server. And if you look there, it did work. So just to be sure it's getting it from the server, let's go to our database and change my first name. So if I go to users, and you probably saw that, but every time I log in, it creates a new token here. And we'll take a look at logging out right after I do this. So let me just go back to users here and change my name to more ease, save that. And now if I reload my app, that should change as well. So let me just log in again. And there you see the updated name. Cool. So now let's work on logging out. Like I just showed you, we have these tokens every time someone logs in. And when we log out, we want to delete those tokens. So if you look at the docs, you'll see some code that shows you how to do that. So revoking tokens. So you can either revoke or delete a specific token, or you can just delete all of them. So let's go ahead and make this endpoint in our Laravel app. So let me just grab that. Let's go back to our code. Let's go to our backend, and let's add a logout route here. So let's add it right here. And it's a post request to /login. So it'll be /API/logout, I mean. Actually, you know what? Let me just duplicate this route over here because we need the middleware as well. So I'm going to duplicate this and let's change it to logout. Let's change it to a post request. And let's delete the tokens. So it'll be request user. request user like this, and we can just return response, say deleted or logged out, and 200. Okay. So now in our front end, let's go ahead and add that. So back here to our auth provider, we want to make a request to that endpoint and then do this if it's successful. So I'm just going to grab this Axios call. So let me just grab all of this, just paste that in here, and there is no params. It's going to be /API/logout. And we don't need all this. So what we do need is to put this in here once the promise resolves and once logging out is successful. And we can just leave the catch there. And we also need to pass in the bearer token as well. So let's grab this. Again, I'm repeating code. There should be a better way to do this, but I didn't spend too much time researching how to do that. Okay, so now if I log out, let's see if this works. So if I log out, let's see if it deletes the tokens. So log out goes back to the login screen, and let's check our database. And these should be gone when I refresh. And they are. Cool. So now the last thing I want to do is just add some validation errors in the login page. So let's go ahead and do that. So back to our code. So we have to set the state in our auth provider, and then we can grab that state from the auth stack. So let's add a new piece of state here called error or error message. Error is fine. Error, set error. And in our catch, when we're logging in, we can set the error here. So if you console log the error response, you'll see that there are a bunch of keys corresponding to the errors. And I showed this in the first airlock video. You kind of have to drill down to get the first error. So I'm not going to go over that here. I'm just going to do it quickly. So we just want the key. So object.keys, error.response.data.errors. And we want the first one. So that's going to be the email. And then now we just want to set the error message to error.response.data.errors key and the first one. Okay, so let's save that. And now if we go into our auth stack, we can grab the error from there. So if we go up here, we can grab the error here from our context. And right here above the first input is where I want to put that error. So let me just render something here to see if it looks okay. And then we'll add the conditional on it. So let's make it red. And let's put a margin bottom on it too. Margin bottom 24. And we close that text. Error here. Let's see if that looks okay. Okay. And now we can put the error in there. Okay. And we want to only display it when there is an error. So let me just add a conditional here. So I don't have prettier setup at all, and I definitely should. So I don't have to do all this formatting. Error and okay. And now let's see if this works. So I'm going to give it a incorrect login. And we should see that error. And it doesn't work. Okay, so I had the square brackets in the wrong place. So let me just add that, close that one, save that. And now let's try again. Oh yeah, and we also have to expose it up here. So after the user, I will expose the error as well. And now, if I go back to my app, if I log in, there we go, cool. And if I try logging in, this should work. Awesome. So there you have it, guys. A look at using Airlock for token-based authentication and an example using React Native and Expo. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.